So I'm really excited about this first panel, which is sponsored and hosted by Around the Rings, which I'm sure you are familiar with as a font of all knowledge, all things Olympics. Bradley joined middle of last year, so he's the new editorial director, Bradley? Managing editor. So we'll just let the melee settle down, and then I will hand the reins to you.
All right, thank you. All right, my name is Bradley Smith. I am the managing editor for Around the Rings Olympic website. For those not familiar, we are an Olympic-based website. Olympic movement, IOC, federations, host cities, basically anything Olympics related, we cover. So needless to say, it is a great privilege and a great honor to be here at the Olympic Museum. This is my first visit here, so I'm certainly enjoying it. And our topic today is commercial revitalization. I'll just let each of you go ahead and introduce yourself, if that's all right.
Thank you, Bradley. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Bonjour. I'm Jonny Cowan. I am the Europe General Manager for World Table Tennis, which is part of the ITTF group, the International Table Tennis Federation, and great to hear reference already this morning to table tennis and tech ball, so I'm already warmed up, I think.
Yeah, hi, good morning. My name is Mike Emery, and I'm the CEO of Joymo. I'm from Wales originally, so I'm rather smug at the moment, following qualification. I live in Norway, and Joymo is a media platform for under-commercialized sport and sport assets.
And I'm Dominic Grainger. I work for WPP, a leading marketing services company in the world. I lead our specialist communications group, including our global sports practice, and I'm based in London.
And Mike, I'll say, as an American, your stay in the World Cup will be short, since you're in our group. So, just so you know.
I fancy our chances against you guys.
All right, fair enough. We'll see. I want to start off Around the Rings. We spoke with IOC President Thomas Bach just before the Beijing Games began. We asked him if he was excited for the Paris 24 Games being a quote return to normal for the Olympics, and he had said that it's not going to be a return to normal, that there's never going to be a return to normal. We are going to adjust to a new normal, which the sports world now is beginning to do so. We've seen a Super Bowl at maximum capacity, the Masters, Champions League final, all of that. How just your thoughts as far as how we are adjusting to this new normal?
Yeah, fine. I'll jump in. I think the expression "new normal" was bandied about rather a lot during the pandemic, and I'm not sure actually anybody knew what it meant. They just said it, kind of trying to appear like some sort of oracle for a time that they couldn't imagine. Neither could we. But I think what has happened is that we are living in a more digital world, and people are more digitalized. Everyone that couldn't use Zoom before can now use Zoom. Mm-hmm. And that goes across the whole of society, right? From grandparents down to kids. So I feel that what we're seeing and will be seeing is an appreciation and understanding that the way that organizations need to digitalize and plan their digital futures should be changing. It's not just enough now to kind of think we should be streaming or we should be sending this content out to a digital audience. They have to think about the way that they want to preserve their ownership of the content and of the data, and how they can plan their commercial strategy based around the learnings from that data. So in my world, I think the new normal is things have accelerated tremendously, and I think knowledge has accelerated tremendously. And I see that in sport and governing bodies that we're working with, there's now a real understanding that they have a tremendous opportunity in front of them to reach a bigger digital audience.
Yeah, and just building on that, I'd agree that I think in reality, what happened has accelerated many of the things that were already going on in the world, particularly around, how people spend their time, how people use digital channels, etc. And I think it gives us all a massive opportunity. Obviously, some challenges that come with that, but as I say, maybe it's forcing us to do things much quicker that we were already starting to do and might have taken 10 years to do, and we now need to do them kind of in 2 or less, or yesterday. And the reality is we were working with a lot of our clients are brands who might be your partners or potential partners, and I think we were already, we're trying to change our own business, we're trying to help our clients to change their businesses, and I think in that sense we're all in the same boat. So it's really about how can we really transform ourselves, but learn more, I guess, about our fans in your cases and our audiences and all our stakeholders. And the more we learn about them, the more we can, have valuable data about them and actually build more meaningful relationships. And I think, in the past it was very much built on physical, and we were starting to get more digital. And now the opportunity of digital is really, really massive, I think. I'm sure we'll come back to that. But I think, new normal, the old world. The great thing is people are coming back. People are back at events in force. Yep. They really want live experiences, and we shouldn't forget that, despite all this digital stuff. And of course, with technology, you can build in these mixed reality worlds and all the stuff that I certainly don't understand well enough yet. And I think that's just the potential of that is we're just at the very beginning of that.
Yeah.
Totally agree with both my colleagues up here. We had an interesting journey in table tennis. I think through 2016-17, the International Table Tennis Federation realized that they wanted to catapult the sport forward. So World Table Tennis was created through a tender process in the marketplace through 2018-2019 to re-energize, redefine and reimagine the sport in a more commercial show sense, putting the players and the fans to the forefront. And then we launched, and the pandemic hit. So we couldn't put the events on, and I'm really excited to connect with some host cities here in Lausanne to discuss potential, but that really forced us then to look at the digital and engagement side. We launched an app. We're talking about WeChat programs in China to connect with our biggest audience in the sport. And yeah, we just basically, as you were saying, Dominic, accelerated all of our engagement focus so that we can convert some of those 519 million fans and followers around the world into colleagues, engaged fans in our ecosystem so that we can continue to connect on table tennis.
And Jonny, your biggest market, I would assume, is China and Asia. Obviously, China is still dealing with massive COVID surges. The Asian Cup was recently, they had to forfeit hosting the Asian Cup. How difficult has this been for you to engage with your largest target audience?
We've had huge contact. Our team is in Singapore. And our group CEO is speaking Chinese, connected very much into our colleagues in China. Yes, it is our biggest market. We've had some of the most amazing events in China. We will have our World Championships, all being well, later this year in Chengdu. And that was an agreement through our AGM where we had our World Championships last year in Houston, and then we'll go to Chengdu because of our ping pong diplomacy, which Jean-Jérôme will probably know about through our work with Peace and Sport and the ITTF Foundation. And that was very much around ping pong diplomacy. So the narrative and the story in table tennis is very much around we've been to the US and now we're going to China. So it is a key market for us, and we're working with our colleagues in China to maximize the opportunities when they come around again.
Great. We had talked for host city. You talked about digitals as well. I get for host cities though, a lot is dependent on showing off their city kind of in person. A lot of that face-to-face interaction. Just kind of, I guess, trying to get your thoughts on how host cities can kind of maximize this new kind of digital as a way to showcase their cities without as much face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, well, I guess, well, for a start, people are coming back. So I think, I think we can get people back in the right ways. Maybe it's about thinking about the experience that people are really going to have and what experience do they want, not just an old-fashioned experience, but a lot more interactive and engagement around that. I mean, I do think as well, coming back to this digital transformation point, the more that I would say federations can work with host cities to share data on their audiences, on their fans, on the host cities obviously know their city well, matching that data. The more you understand not just the fan base, but obviously there's a potential fan base in a host city that might not be existing fans. That's a massive opportunity. And then how you engage with those people, with the existing fans, with the potential fans, and by knowing more about them, this is a very obvious point, but by knowing more about them, then you can build the experiences they really want rather than something that we think they want or, second guessing. So I think, just the more we learn, the more we can build experiences that are really valuable for people, and you can bring in the right partners as well who can help in that experience, because a lot of that experience might not be directly connected with the sport. It might be just, social and part of a wider, broader experience that they'll have with other people. So I still think that the same sort of opportunity exists to use digital platforms and data in particular better to build new experiences, which, will be more hybrid as well. They'll be physical, virtual. You can involve a lot of people who aren't in that city in the experience as well. And that'll happen more and more, I believe.
I think that's a really good point about data from governing bodies supporting physical events and host cities. And if anybody's paying attention to fintech, so financial tech at the moment, the reason why fintech companies are valued as they are is that they are able to capture so many data points on their customers. And if you compare to a bank, for example, when banks are deciding how to give mortgages to people, they basically know what you earn, how much debt you have, and then they base a decision on the mortgage based on that. But fintech companies have N plus 500 data points. And governing bodies that we're talking to don't really understand the value of the data that they're missing. And so we sit with them and we talk about, well, this isn't just about email addresses, right? This isn't about building a database. This is about tailoring the sport, the experience, the journey that you want your fan base and members and athletes to go on with you. And in order to build that over a sustainable 10-year period, you actually need to understand the data around these people and your sport a lot better. And so connecting, I had a meeting just yesterday where someone said, how can you guys help us make our events better, digital events? And I said, well, yes, but make your physical events better. Your digital events will come. So to go to the host city point and the governing body supporting those, the data that governing bodies can feed into the host cities to help those physical events become better, which will then breed a better digital experience for the sport as a whole.
Totally agree with, again, both of you there. I think in the past, certainly in table tennis, we may have arrived in a city and delivered the event. And as it's an indoor sport, in the main, although there are outdoor tables, which obviously Victor has taken and curved it and done other things, which is fantastic. Outdoor tables to engage in a city and connect to communities. We would probably have just arrived in an indoor venue and potentially a city may not really have known what was going on and that a world or an Olympic champion was in that venue. So very much to that point, make the events bigger, more engaging, more entertainment, more connection in the right city with the right product, so that we do work with the host city for their objectives. And as you say there, Mike, wrap that around with the data so that we can share those demographics, those targets, engage in the right events in the right way to maximize for all stakeholders. Challenging, may take time for us to piece together all the jigsaw pieces, but the jigsaw has certainly started.
Excellent. And there are so many outside of the Olympics. There are, literally hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller events, youth games, youth championships, all of that are perhaps undercovered, underpublicized, but they are yet crucial to their organization, to their cities. How can they kind of take advantage of all of this?
Yeah.
In order to, I mean, in order to survive, really. It's been, I imagine, a difficult 2 years for a lot of these smaller organizations.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that the subject of this is commercial revitalization, right? During the pandemic period, there's been tremendous challenges placed on governing bodies, and I don't mean to tell anybody their business here, but everything from athletes and young people dropping out of the sport to a drop in revenues. So what Jonny just mentioned it a second ago, this isn't going to happen overnight. And I think the governing bodies should be taking a long-term view on how to start gaining control of their assets, and then working on a commercial strategy to develop those assets over time, so that will then breed a more sustainable income for the organization. And to go directly to your point about kind of youth events, and I guess you're talking about sport a little bit lower down the pyramid.
Yeah,
right?
kind of
things that
funneling what.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about rights and that we always end up talking about the Premier League rights.
Exactly.
And so forth, but underneath that, there's a lot of sport that traditionally is popped out on social media because that's what you do.
Yep.
Right. You just put it there.
Yep.
And then you celebrate 35,000 views, and then you go, great, next year we'll get 45,000 views. And my question to that was, but why? And so I think answering the why, structuring commercial and digital strategy around that why, we're realizing that it's not just about the broadcast, but it's also about the data. We can actually genuinely add a more sustainable income flow to these organizations that will ultimately strengthen the bottom of the pyramid over time. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a number of really exciting players in this market, like us, that are supporting organizations like you guys on quite a challenging project, but one that needs to happen if we're going to revitalize commercially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, it's an interesting point you make there, because we sort of have a view too that if we provide the best conditions for our players and then have the right platforms for the right reasons for our fans, we're in a very good place. That then allows us to try to look at the broader view in a much more holistic way, so that we can look at how we might use NFTs, Web3, the metaverse. We are looking at those things at the moment to engage and create, I think, Bradley, to the agenda on the point you want us to discuss around the revitalization. But until we have the core architecture in place, the foundation of the house, as was mentioned in the session before, then we're not going to achieve what we really want to achieve. But, if we do take youth events, but if we wrap that around with some cool digital content technology, I think we've got a real chance in all of our sports and activities to really grow our pyramids. So not just stretch it from the top, but actually grow it out from the bottom as well, where people have a sense of purpose and community within that sport or that activity, whatever age or level that they're at.
Yeah, and just building on that, I mean, that's why I can't emphasize enough how I think the whole digital transformation cliche as an expression is important, because the more you have that data on your fans, the more you can target them with content that is relevant to them. And there is fantastic content around all these events, particularly, I'd say, grassroots events. And if you've got the talent there, we shouldn't forget talent. The talent in your sports, however big or small the sport might be, they're the heroes of the people. They're kids' heroes. These are the people that are going to bring new people into your sports, grow new audiences. And I think the opportunity of this digital data revolution is that you can get your content to anyone in the world, in theory, or almost anyone in the world. Yeah, you may not always commercially monetize it, but you may be growing your audience, which you can then later monetize, or you monetize your audience immediately. And I think as well, after the pandemic, there is a sort of a need from people for events, and they could be smaller events, they could be very much grassroots events, and that's maybe how you get into a sport. You don't just go to some world championships and get into it. You might go and see people who, when you're a kid, aren't much older than you, and they're the future champions of that sport. So I just think all of this is, you may not make huge commercial money on day one, but if you're not activating around that and actually getting your fantastic content out there, as you were saying, Jonny, then you're not giving yourself a chance enough of it, because there is a lot of competition for people's attention. You know, that's the tough bit of it. But there's opportunity there. Sorry.
I'd like to give a really tangible example based on a meeting I had yesterday with the governing body within your sport, actually, Jonny. They have an insurance company that sponsors them, and an important sponsor as well. But that insurance company hasn't really been able to capitalize upon that sponsorship of that governing body. They haven't been able to sell insurance policies. I think they have. I think it's about 15. And the reason why that company sponsors that sport is because the CEO of that company is tremendously positive and passionate about that sport, which is great but unsustainable, right? And so I said to them, you know, imagine a world where you're able to broadcast, and instead of just popping up an advert, which currently, you know, YouTube pop up that advert, but imagine you could pop up that advert, and maybe not to sell a policy, but maybe that advert could be gamification, something that your viewers can engage in, can actually interact with, click on things. So suddenly, if you build your audience, you can start to survey your fans, so that then your sponsor is being fed data by you to enable them to better activate that partnership that they have with you, or actually to find out that maybe it's not the right partnership after all. And that's also fine, right? So to feed on what you're saying, you know, data in a real tangible sense, you have your audience, engage them in an exciting way that will actually help your sponsors get more out of your sponsorships, and ultimately help governing bodies get more in sponsorship value. But not if you give that opportunity away to Alphabet or...
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that maybe in terms of semantics, Mike, you know, the term in our world of sponsorship shifting to partnership, and similarly in host cities, it's not just arriving and delivering, it's about connecting and joint targets. Because once you sign an agreement or put the logo on or arrive at the airport, that's only part of the story, right? It's what are you doing around that to ensure benefits, and that's something that's really challenged our minds, and clearly you mentioned talent as well, Dominic. You know, the recruitment of the right people in the right parts of the world is also a challenge as we grow out now and come through the pandemic and the countries open up again. But definitely doing those extra things to connect on the data and hit the objectives, because that's what a partnership should be about.
And just coming back to these smaller maybe events in host cities, I mean, a lot of commercial partners are looking increasingly at purpose and engaging with people, really genuinely giving something back to the community, being connected with communities. So you shouldn't forget that. I think a lot of big partners, you know, of course, they may want to associate with a sport for the headlines and for the big tentpole events. But the reality is as well, I think more and more, they do want to be associated in communities and get involved, and you know, what might be a relatively small amount of money to a commercial partner might be a lot of money to you relative to what you currently make out of those events. So I wouldn't rule that out. I was actually talking to someone yesterday who said that, you know, he'd been told that one of the big global partners of his sport, you know, wasn't interested in associating with quite a big local event actually. But then when he talked to the local representatives of those commercial partners, they were desperate to get involved, end up getting involved. It didn't cost the sport anything, and they obviously created a much better experience for people. So it's a kind of really simple example, but just by communicating, as you're saying, John, just by having a two-way conversation with partners and saying, would you be interested in this? I think a lot can come out of that. And I certainly see from our clients, they want to get more involved. They want to give something back. They want to be seen genuinely to be part of a community. Of course, they want their commercial bang for their buck as well, but some of these events may not be where they get their commercial bang for their buck. It might be some other part of your sport.
Were there any questions? Anyone? No? Okay.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So if we see the commercial ecosystem broken down into three main parts: broadcast, sponsorship, and event generation. On the panel, we've got one representing each there. So, Mike, if you look at broadcast, Dominic, if you look at sponsorship, and then Jonny, you look at everything else. What, if you were the commercial director of a federation, I know you sort of are, Jonny, but if you were, what is the one thing you would put in your commercial strategy in that area of your expertise? So if you kick off, Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to cheat a bit here, but I'm going to focus on something we've talked about and data, because I think it runs through everything, and then I will answer on the sponsorship side. But I think it is about having a really digital and data-driven approach, because if you do understand your existing fans and your potential other prospect fans, I guess, then you can build, you know, a better strategy around all those areas, I think, as we've been touching on. I think on sponsorships, you know, a big problem now for commercial partners who want to associate with a sport is you can go on gut feel. You can say, I want to be associated with that sport because it sort of feels right. And there's still a lot of decisions based on that kind of thing. And that's increasingly going to get challenged because companies are under pressure, you know, to justify their investments. So I think the more, what they really want to know is, yeah, who are the consumers I'm going to get to by associating with your sport? And so coming back, if you've got that data, even a fraction of that data, and can start to demonstrate, no, these are the people, these are their, you know, ages, these are the countries they live in, you know, all this basic stuff. And you may have some of that now, but, and then you can tailor, because as a brand, I want to then engage with those people. And I want to build valuable relationships, not just a long-term relationship. So I want to have a long-term relationship with you as my sports partner, in order to build long-term relationships with either existing consumers or new ones. And that'll be about content, and we're just touching on that. There's so many opportunities to generate really cool content, and you'll do some of that as well through streaming and whatever else. But even just social media, other digital content. But if I don't know who that's going to be seen by, then it's difficult to justify charging me a lot for a partnership. So coming back to the commercial side of it, but people will pay. If they know that they can get to a certain audience, it might be quite a niche audience, they'll pay for that for sure. And they'll be able to justify that. So to me, it's just a basic point. If you haven't got that in place, invest in that. There's different ways of investing. Maybe partners can help you invest in that as well, because I appreciate not everyone's got, you know, money just to invest in these areas, but I think there are partners who can help you do that. Maybe that's part of a deal you do, that they help you digitally transform your organization, and you don't get cash for that, but that'll generate more cash from other partners. So sorry, I've drifted out of the question.
No, I mean, you know, I think data is going to be a leitmotif, you know, throughout all business-to-business events over, you know, has been over the last couple of years, will continue to be. I think eventually the message will get through, and those rights holders in the room will recognise that that is the new oil. It's the new oil for sponsorship, and you will only maximise your sponsorship rights if you maximise your data analytics. For those of you that weren't with us yesterday, we had a presentation from SponsorForce, who are our partners in this marketplace, in the sponsorship marketplace. And I would recommend that you have a think about utilising them. They are a sponsorship marketplace, bringing buyers of sponsorship together with rights holders in a transactional way. So, you know, it's a completely new concept. They have a number of Asian, Chinese and Japanese sponsors that are looking to break into the global marketplace. You've got nothing to lose by getting on their platform. Mike, broadcast, apart obviously from doing an amazing deal with you paying for rights, what else could a federation do to maximise their revenues in the broadcast space?
Me paying for rights.
Well, that's the new model, isn't it? You're very discerning, but
no, my answer is a really short one, which is D2C, direct to consumer. So do that, and then everything else will flow behind it, right? That doesn't mean you don't use YouTube, and it doesn't mean you don't use the BBC or whoever, Canal Plus or whatever. It means that the strategy needs to be built around your D2C experience, the experience that you want to deliver to your fans today and the fans in 5 years' time, and then decisions around rights and decisions around BBC and decisions around Insta Reels and TikTok will be made on a solid platform of the dialogue you want to have with your consumers. And to not do that, you cannot mine the data that everyone's talking about without making that quite simple decision first. And there are great organizations out there that you don't need to put 35 tech people in-house to do this. Absolutely not. But you do need to find a good agency or a good partner and work with them over the long term. And
then monetizing that through a subscription model?
Just like fintech, there's a bunch of different ways you can monetize it. But I mean, there are some really good examples of subscription models. One that instantly pops to mind is what World Volleyball have done. But they've used subscription model and to feed a phenomenal growth across social media on Insta and TikTok.
And then monetizing that through sponsorship and
growth in the sport and subscriptions, which is absolutely. And subscription model is one important decision in that. But there's lots of ways to monetize.
And Mike is being incredibly humble. We, as MEI, work with 77 best-in-class suppliers to help mitigate risk, minimize cost, and maximize revenues. Joymo are our favored brand for streaming. So you haven't given yourself a plug, so I'll give you a plug. Jonny, I will challenge you to answer this without mentioning data.
Crikey, Andy. I think that the guys summarised it pretty well. I think what I would add, Andy, would be...
You can't keep agreeing with them. Well, that gets really boring. We need some conflict here. We need some disagreement.
I'm worried about these two from the kickoff. They started right away on the football thing. I would sort of add, Andy, I think your philosophy and how you're in the market. So I mean, talking from a table tennis perspective, we believe that we are a sport that can be for anybody of any age. We're Olympic athletes, para-athletes. We have the World Parkinson's, World Championships. There's studies done on brain health and so on and so forth, coordination. We truly believe that table tennis is easy accessible. It can be in parks. It can be in schools. It's very easy and it's not that expensive to get involved in. So that drives us to use information. Can I say the word information?
Well, you're skating on thin ice, really.
Information, a philosophy of D2C and using whatever tech. But I think that the words I would use would be your value proposition and the connections you use to deliver your sport. So that goes for host cities and making sure we're working with cities to deliver value. Our sponsor partners to make sure we're aligned on the demographics and the value and the conversions that we're making, connecting with our fans. But also in terms of what platforms we use, whether we use some of the available platforms to us that we don't own, which platforms do we need to own, which is the information on our fans' demographic, where do they live, how can we engage with them directly. And so all of those connections, conversations, tone of voice, we're very humble in the way we try to do it in table tennis. There are bigger, bolder sports than us, but I think that way in which you're operating in the market is really important as well.
Yeah, I actually love that answer because it kind of balances the mathematical data side of things. Talking about values, we clearly live in an increasingly values-driven world, and the emotional transfer that a brand can get from a sport, if it's seen to be values-driven, if it's seen to be triumphing and building a sustainable world, and then those emotional that emotional transfer will go to the corporate brand, and they'll be prepared to pay for that. Right, we got time for one more question. Sanj. There's only one Sanji in the room.
Just shout it out. Shout it out.
Yeah, please, Ashley, here. This is going to be really embarrassing if you miss it.
Oh, it's going to hurt.
Just
nice.
say who you are and where you're from.
Sure. Thank you for the clap for the catch. That was good. So my name's Sanjit. I'm the co-founder of a company called Halfspace Group. Questions for Jonny, but if anyone wants to know how to build that data and collect it and case studies, I'm presenting on that at 2:20. So plug for that. So Jonny, on the commercialization side, where are you guys in coordinating with national governing bodies on what they're doing, aggregating audiences for a wider commercial opportunity? Is that something that you're looking at and you would recommend?
Pass that on. Good man. Yeah, great question. Good to see you. Maybe we'll catch up later on this afternoon. Yeah, we're doing a couple of things. One of the things that we have done is rebuilt all of our IT architecture to be fit for purpose. So I guess through the pandemic, we spent a lot of time and dollars rebuilding that entire architecture in the back end. One of the reasons to try to have all of the sport data in one place so that we have one single source of the truth, whether, you know, Jonny's 46 or 26, whether he's right-handed, left-handed, is a good player, bad player, which I was in the past. But all of that core data, ranking, prize money, journey from day one to world number one. So clearly our member associations play a key role in that because they are operating a lot of events around the world. So one of the things that we are doing at the moment is that we've built our competition software so that our member associations, for example, can license that. So the platform's already in place. They can run their entire competition structure through that. Therefore, when players are entering the event and also competing in the event and all of their results, that filters through into the system, which help us aggregate on that side. Next stage will be the sort of fans and how we connect the fan side of our databases. So clearly through our events and our content and platforms, we want to be able to connect that story into our member associations, whichever country we're in, so that we maximize all of our efforts, if that sort of touches on some of those areas.
Thanks, Jonny. Okay, well, we seem to have run our race this morning. Hopefully that's given you some ideas and some notes with regards to your own commercial revitalisation. I would personally like to thank Bradley, ATR and the panellists, and I'm sure you'd like to do the same.
Thank you.
So Laura, if you'd like to come and join us.